Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining me today on my channel, Dream Craft Create. I am super excited. I went to a really cool event over the weekend. It was the Crop and Create card making event, and I made a bunch of amazing cards and learned some really cool tips and tricks that I'm going to share with you today. So let's get started. The first tip is don't forget about your washi tape. You can use it to create really cool borders on the sides of your cards. The second tip I want to share is to use a jelly roll pen around your images to create dimension. This is a watercolor card that I did, and it looked really nice without the jelly roll, but adding it on top of it on these little spots around on the flowers really made the image pop. My third tip is to use masking paper to create really awesome silhouettes. Gina Kay had a class where we cut out masking magic using our dies, and then we put the masking magic on and blended. It was amazing. You can do this with masking magic, with mint tape. In a pinch, you can even do it with cardstock and then just put it down really lightly on your paper and shade around it or shade inside of it like a stencil. There are so many different ways to mask. This was a torn piece of masking paper. This was a window die. And this was just 2 strips on the sides. It creates a really beautiful look. Amy Yingling with the Stamp Market taught a class with lots of cool tips and tricks. The first, use paper to create dimension. We cut strips of paper and added them on the diagonal to create dimension on this card. In this card, we cut strips of paper and put them behind a die and on top of a die in order to create a fun pattern. Here, we used a stamp and we repeated it in different colors. As you stamp, you just move your paper down on your stamping platform. Here, we used a stencil and texture paste, and then we added glitter. Beautiful effect. And then one of my tips. If you want to adhere vellum to a card, but you don't want to see the glue underneath, use glossy accents. It'll dry completely clear underneath your vellum and you won't be able to see where you put the glossy accents. This is embossed and then adhered with glossy accents. Jen Shirkus with Lawn Fawn taught a class on watercoloring backgrounds. This was a really fun class. My favorite tip, though, was what she shared for mass-producing die cuts. First, cut out a negative and line up your stamps in the negative spaces. Then, cut out several more of the die cuts that you want to mass produce. You take your stamping platform, pick up your stamps, and now you can just inset your die cuts into that negative space. This is so much faster than going in and trying to line up a die cut to cut out each of these individual pieces over and over again. Get your ink. Sorry for the shaking. And stamp. Now, you can take your die cuts out put your negative back down and line up the next set. Kathy Z with Concord and Ninth taught a clean and simple class. My favorite tip that she shared was when you're doing a die inlay, use a jewel picker to pick up the pieces to inlay. You also can use a thumbtack which is a tip shared by Vicky Budin. Or you can use some type of weeding tool that you have. Leah Lawson with Pink Fresh Studios taught a class on layering stencils. She had a lot of fun tips and tricks. I think my favorite was making multiples. If you're going to get out all the ink and your brushes to make this type of card, it makes sense to make a lot of them. What you do is you take your base layer and you put multiple on your work surface, and then you're going to tape the top and bottom of each piece using some type of low tack tape. Then you take your stencils and you do stencil 1, wipe it down, move it to the next. Stencil 1, wipe it down, move on to the next. Stencil 1, wipe it down, and so on and so forth. You do the same thing then with stencil 2, stencil 3, and however many more stencils are in your set. This set, I believe, had 5 layers of stencils, and it turned out beautiful. Now I want to share a tip with you that's my tip that I absolutely love, and it has to do with dimension. I'm going to show you an example. This is Craft EVA foam. What I do is I take my die cuts and I die cut the foam. When you do that, you're left with these foam die cuts. Now, what you can do is you take the die cut out of foam and you take your paper die cut that you've stamped and you glue them together to create all this dimension. This is perfect because you don't have to worry about it getting smushed in the mail, and you also don't have to worry about putting on all of those tiny little squares or circle foam dots, and it's a lot cheaper. So I definitely recommend that you check out EVA foam for creating dimension. I used that tip on this card. You can see behind the thanks is a layer of foam, then a layer of vellum, and then you have your die cuts. And I did layer the die cuts on top for just the word thanks. I also use the foam to create dimension behind my top layers. It is such a time saver because then you're not having to glue together multiple pieces of paper, and it looks more uniform, and it's less expensive. Win-win. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for watching. If you are interested in seeing any of these cards close up, please head over to my Instagram at DreamCraftCreate, and you can see close-ups of each card. I also suggest liking and subscribing to my channel. I plan to do a lot more tip and trick videos. I have so many more to share. Also, please go to my blog, www.dreamcraftcreate.com. I have a lot of fun projects there, and you can get access to a lot of my Cricut project links, as well as some other fun stuff. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and that's it. Bye.